I won't make him.
I'd like to welcome everybody here to the Reopen Florida panel discussion. We are here to help share what we have learned about Fort Walton Beach and Okaloosa County getting back in business after the shutdown. Thank you, Ted, Seth, and the staff of the Fort Walton Beach Chamber for supporting this initiative to empower this panel and you, our community, to help us all get back to business. I would like to start with a few notes about this Zoom meeting. I will provide a short introduction, followed by introductions of the panel.
We do
and
allow
questions.
donated PTO to other staff.
We will move through the panel topics from government and legal, restaurant, retail, and tourism. We will then open the session to questions and answers. Your microphones will remain muted unless they are spotlighted to ask a question during the Q&A. And we encourage you to submit questions via the chat function, and please include in there your name, after the panel is completed, if the answer requires some research. We're also recording this meeting so you can view it later. So if you can't stay for the whole thing, please come back later and view the recording. So let's get on with reopening Florida. We're in a time of evolving territory. We hear an abundance of statistics, recommendations, suggested changes to regulations, and other data. The question is, how do we digest this information, understand our goals, and achieve success in this environment? The answer starts with understanding, patience, and positive cooperation. Our area is full of excellent organizations, opportunities, and most importantly, excellent people. We have 4 great panelists today, each with expertise in key areas of our community, including government, legal, restaurant, retail, and tourism. Our goal is to share our viewpoints on how to navigate these times, lay the foundation for us to build a strong recovery, and most importantly, communicate. Do we have all the correct answers? No. We do have some insight we can share to help you gather information, think about that information, and integrate your thoughts into solutions. We also have the ability to get your inputs through the chat, through email. As we proceed through this discussion, please submit your questions in the chat area. We're gathering your questions so we can answer them here as time and knowledge permits, or to gather more information and respond to you at a later time. Once again, please put your name, your business, and your question and email address in there. Communication as a community will help us all approach the future with better tools in hands. Today, we plan to discuss the viewpoints in those areas I discussed above to help us getting back to business. Our first panelist, Nathan Boyles, is our Okaloosa County Commissioner. Nathan has great insight to government discussions and interactions focusing on reopening. Nathan, Florida is the world's 17th largest economy. What do the goals of the federal, state, and local government guidelines provide us for reopening business?
Thanks, Stephen. I think they provide us with an overwhelming amount of information that can be difficult to absorb, evaluate, and then apply to our particular circumstances, very frankly. And there's a lot out there that is in the way of recommendation, guideline, advisory. There's less out there that is in the way of actual regulatory, though certainly that is out there, in particular coming from our state government right now. And so I think for folks, perhaps most important is to first understand the distinction between those two as they apply to their businesses. Certainly, determine what your actual regulatory do's and don'ts are within your certain area, but then, pivot and take a look at the recommendation type items and treat those in the context maybe as you would a set of best practices. And, you're going to have to do some work, frankly, to attempt to, at times, square maybe what you're hearing from the state government and federal government, because those may not always be exactly consistent. At a local level, I think you're going to see us working to recognize kind of the uniqueness of our economy here. And then hopefully through a committee that we have established, which actually Nate Van Adder, who's on this call today, I know is a member of, be promulgating a set of recommended guidelines that are more specific to the experiences of businesses within Okaloosa County, both from the intensity of the virus, or frankly lack thereof here, and then also the nuances and specifics of our economy, in particular being a tourism-driven economy.
Great. That's a great start to this panel. And, we're hearing a lot about this phased approach. So what can we do in phase one, which we're in now?
Well, that depends in large part on who you are and what you do. And so, as we know, there are many businesses that, basically have been operating without limitation for the duration of this pandemic. There are others who have been completely shuttered. And so we're now moving to this first phase where there's a range of businesses that are now being prohibited to reopen operations. And most of those are being given that permission within a set of restrictions or guidelines. In large part, you're seeing reductions in, say, occupancy, whether you're a restaurant or a non-essential retail business. At a local level, we never closed businesses by and large. That wasn't action that was taken by local government. In Florida, that was action by and large taken by state government. And so what we're seeing is those decisions are being made at a state level. And I think, frankly, we'll see some discrepancy in maybe the sizing of those decisions to our community. Great example being vacation rentals. Obviously, vacation rentals were closed, but not if you were a resort or a hotel or a timeshare. Well, certainly in Okaloosa County, with 80% of our vacation rentals being concentrated in kind of the independent vacation rental market, that's had a much different impact than it would, say, in a place like Orlando. And so I think we need to acknowledge those discrepancies, certainly in this phase one, expect that those discrepancies will continue into phase 2 and 3, and perhaps, be even more highlighted for us, and then work to try and make sure our voice is being heard at the governor's office and elsewhere to ensure that there's a recognition that, a one-size-all approach may not work in every corner of the state as we move forward. Okay,
many of us are going to be looking local first because we live here, we breathe here, this is where we love to be. And, guiding through all these different agencies and regulations, how do you view the local government's readiness to help us, determine and navigate the regulation area?
I mean, we're, probably a little behind, as we always are at the government level and even the local government level. But I think you're seeing us try very hard to be as quickly reactive as possible. So, we've obviously been meeting every week for the last 2 months now, and you're seeing a willingness to revisit decisions when necessary on the fly in order to kind of match evolving circumstances. I think the fact that the beaches reopened today, 4 days, 5 days earlier from when the majority was anticipating opening those all day long, is an example of the fact where we're doing our dead level best to attempt to be adaptive in a way that is supportive as possible for our local business owners.
Great. Almost every day I travel over the Destin Bridge and I look at Crab Island and all the activities that are usually out there. It's a unique recreation area which integrates both local and federal oversight. And I think this might be a good area we can you give us a feel how an area such as Crab Island with these multi-agency oversights will be navigating this time, so maybe it'll help some other people that are in similar situations.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of where you have to be willing or be aware of the fact that even for businesses that don't traditionally consider themselves regulated, as much as others, that there are layers that we're seeing being peeled back right now. And so Crab Island, a great example. We closed our vendor permits on Crab Island, effectively ending commercial activity within that area. Was followed suit by federal action at the federal parks level to suspend their license. So there's a dual licensure requirement out there now because of dual jurisdictional issues. And so that was fine. We were in concert with one another, but now we have moved. Okaloosa County is agreed to, we'll kind of, as a part of the beach reopenings, we're going to stand back up and start reauthorizing those licenses. However, the federal park system is not going to do that. And so they are going to await and track more closely with federal guidance. And they're going to be looking at specific trending, downward trending of infection rates within, I guess, the Panhandle, or maybe even more focused to Okaloosa County. And so you've got folks who are being told, yeah, hey, you can go back to work with this one license, but it looks like you need 2 licenses to be able to operate. And so you're actually not going to be able to go to work just yet. And so I think that highlights the kind of the critical effort that every business owner needs to take. Who is giving me guidance, and then who actually regulates me, and what is each one of those entities, organizations telling me, and what information is available, and make sure that you don't overlook one because of the louder noise you may be hearing about this part of the economy's open or that part's open. Vacation rentals, a very similar issue. The word went out that vacation rentals, were banned by the governor, but when you began to dig into the nuance of that order, you're not exactly an across-the-board ban. So, maybe you have, you rent RV sites, and then you, in fact, were not subject to the ban. Again, why it's important to look at those multiple jurisdictional overlays and really understand the details of the regulation that's directed at your particular industry.
Thank you very much. And I think that brings out, an even bigger point that, a lot of people go to Crab Island and they're going to interact. So a lot of people can get together and communicate about how they work and deal with Crab Island. And I think a lot of the businesses in the area can also have that same perspective that, hey, I'm not the only one navigating these waters, and maybe I can get together with some other people, communicate, and ask the question of who am I working with, what regulations am I under, and how are we all going to handle it. So communication, I think, is really key. Nate Van Adder is a CEO and co-founder of Props Craft Brewery. His expertise in developing a strong, successful Okaloosa business will help us understand how to navigate restaurants. Nate, our local restaurants have been working hard to provide our community the great food and beverages we love. How do we open our restaurants and get back into the dining room?
Thanks, Stephen. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yes. Okay,
my mute button was stuck. I wanted to put that out there in case anybody was playing Zoom bingo. So, I mean, first of all, you have to look at the executive order that the governor put out, and that is 25% indoor capacity. The way that we accomplished that is we had 149 occupancy in there. We took out all but 36 seats. So we should never be in a situation where we'll have more than the 36 seats that were authorized. And that kind of helped us get past that one. We're looking at tables no bigger than 10, no groups bigger than 10, as well as pushing most of our seating outdoor. I think the whole push here is to get people outside in the fresh air. There's really no limitation on outside, and for complying with your local ordinances that Nathan Boyles alluded to. And if you have questions, you can go ask. You can call up the city manager. You call up the folks that would have these answers and say, hey, I'm thinking about marking off some spots in my parking lot. Does anybody have a problem with this? That's what I did, and it worked out. But I think just following the governor's guidelines there, then looking into your local restrictions if there are any. And most of the time, you'll know if you're not allowed to have alcoholic beverages in the parking lot or anything like that. But one of the best resources that I found was the Florida Restaurant Lodging Association website. It's really easy to just Google it, bring it up. They have a frequently asked questions. And for anybody out there that runs a restaurant, has a restaurant or a hotel or anything, you're running about, hey, can I open my pool? what should my employees be wearing? How do I deal with this situation? That frequently asked questions section just answers almost everything. So give it a look.
Okay, that's great advice on that website. That brings people together. So we understand that there's 25% seating capacity, and outside seating we can is pretty unlimited given your space and your ordinances. Is there any direction on who we can serve, and how do we address potentially risky patrons?
That I looked at the the frequently asked questions for that exact situation. If somebody comes in to your restaurant and they're coughing and they're sweating and they look like they may be unsafe, that's really just kind of a judgment call. I think that all of us in the restaurant industry every once in a while have to deal with an unruly patron. As it is, someone may have imbibed a little bit too much, and being smart about it, not being rude, separating them, protecting your employees. And really it kind of goes to the recommendations that the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association talks about on their website. Another plug for them, and that is just the wear of PPE. They recommend that your employees wear masks, that they're wearing gloves, that they wash their hands once an hour, and even recommended having hand sanitizer on the tables. Now, I think it's probably a little aggressive to have hand sanitizer on all the tables. If that could get expensive, and I think that people would start taking them. But those are the recommendations. They're not the rules. It's not a law. But those are things that protect your employees and protect your patrons. And hopefully you won't run into that situation.
That's some great advice, and helping understand that the order doesn't cover everything like the PPE, but it's great to dig into some of those frequently asked questions and asking questions from other local vendors and figure out how to deal with that. And the phase 1 limits indoor seating to 25% capacity, but it does not address or limit hours. What should restaurants consider when deciding what hours to operate in phase 1?
Yeah, so we're open our normal hours. We have seen that it drops off dramatically at night. We're still doing a lot of takeout and to go. My personal recommendation is if you're slow, I would close down early and not worry about your normal hours. However, I think it kind of depends on each individual business. No two restaurants are the same. Lunch places, breakfast places. Right now, if you can be open and you're following your local ordinances, you're not serving alcohol early or late. If you can be open and you can make money, I would suggest staying open, because there's a lot of people out there that can't. And you are providing in many ways a service, even though it's a business. You are providing a way for people to get out and enjoy, sit at a table and enjoy a beer or some food that they didn't have to make themselves. So.
Right. And maybe get out in a parking lot they normally wouldn't sit in and enjoy our great outdoors that we don't get to see too much of right now. So there are some plus sides.
It's a really good time of year for it as well. I mean,
yes.
Just imagine if this was August or September. I mean, wow.
Right. And, consumers are the lifeblood of the local restaurant industry. Given that we're taking steps to open safely, so what type of marketing campaign should we consider to get people out? I mean, I see your great banner behind you, and I know I'm thinking about a beer and some food down at Props. How do we get the marketing out? What kind of marketing style should we approach here?
We're encouraging a lot of stuff on social media. I mean, we do a lot of social media, Facebook and on our Instagram accounts. Right now, I've kind of talked to the local Chamber of Commerce, and they're in Fort Walton Beach, and they're starting a new program called Buy Okaloosa, where it's kind of a rewards program for local businesses. There's some video challenges out there. If somebody mentions your business, you mention another business, and they're putting up these banners for people to promote buying Okaloosa, and that's just supporting local businesses. Right now, there are not a lot of tourists out there, and you really need to target the locals and provide for them what you can, the discounts that you can for those guys, and get them through the door, because the tourist will come back, and they come through the door, the business will return. But right now, you really gotta think about targeting that local community.
Right. It's kind of like when we were riding those bicycles as kids and had the training wheels. Sometimes it just took getting started, getting the economy rolling, even if it's just in our area, and helping each other out, that pretty soon those training wheels are going to fly right off and we'll be back up to full speed. Thank you, Nate. And we're going to switch over to some retail viewpoints. Heather Ruiz is the Senior Director of Marketing and Leasing of Destin Commons. Heather joined Destin Commons 6 years ago. Destin Commons is a center of exceptional shopping, dining, and activities. Heather is also the chair-elect for the Fort Walton Beach Chamber Board of Directors. She has a great understanding of not only our retail community, but is also a leader in our Fort Walton Beach Chamber. Heather, I understand that we're in a phased reopening approach. It's good to know where we are and where we're heading. Right now we're thinking about phase 1, but soon we're going to be thinking about phase 2. Can you recap the guidelines for phase 1 and prep us for phase 2 so we can start even looking ahead a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So as we know, phase 1, we discussed the restaurant capacity. Retail is allowed to open to 25% capacity within their stores. Obviously, social distancing guidelines and everything of that nature are still in full effect. And then as well as the fact that we do know that gyms, hair salons, nail salons, and movie theaters are not yet able to open at this time. So that kind of covers phase 1. Phase 2, as we know, no specifics have actually been released on that, but I have seen some of the task force for Florida's Reopen, some of their recommendations, and the potential for gyms and fitness centers to open during phase 2 is there, obviously with a very limited capacity and strict cleaning and social distancing protocols. And during that time, or even a little bit before, as Mel was chatting earlier in the chat, you can see here, salons could reopen sooner than a phase 2, but again, most likely would reopen in a phase 2, if not sooner. Obviously, there will most likely be some stricter guidelines as far as PPE because you're very close with those people for personal services types of things. And then I would expect in a phase 2 that capacity within general retail would most likely increase a little bit. What that increase would look like, we're not sure yet, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But there are some good kind of guidelines and things that the task force has put forward that you can kind of look at and plan accordingly as much ahead of time as you can. I know the first phase 1 came in rather quickly. I think we got announced on Thursday, and Lord knows my weekend was crazy getting us back up ready and running for Monday.
Yes, and here we are today trying to help everybody else figure this out. I think this is a great thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, I'm a computer person, so I think in zeros and ones. And when I look at the guidelines, it talks about 25% retail capacity, which is far away from a 0 or a 1. How does a business calculate what their 25% capacity is?
So what we've learned and kind of dug into there and have recommended to all of our stores is that you have to take into account, obviously, the square footage of your entire space, but what is the actual square footage of the area that people are going to be in and out of? So if you have a really large stock room in the back that people aren't really in and out of all day long, guests and things of that nature, you don't necessarily want to use that in calculating your capacity. So we're telling everybody it should be 25% capacity of your actual sales floor. So just the area where your guests are shopping and are in at that time to calculate that.
That's great news, and it helps us focus in to figure out how to be safe. And so is there any guidelines on who we can allow in the store?
Kind of like Nate was saying, that's going to become, a best practices and just dealing with it on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, if someone comes in and, they're coughing or sneezing or don't look well, especially if they don't have any PPE on as well, I think it's within everybody's rights to feel comfortable to be able to maybe pull the person aside, speak to them, kind of see what's going on. And, again, this is all going to take a lot of patience and understanding on shoppers and guests side. But it's also important to make sure that your employees within your store are also very comfortable with what your particular store guidelines, rules, and regulations are, and that they feel comfortable also approaching that with other people.
Some great information. And, I know we're trying to protect our employees and our patrons. And when I think about preparing a retail store, I wonder about any potential new procedures, best practices, as you were touching on, such as checkout procedures. How do we prepare our store to maybe operate efficiently, effectively, and safely?
Yeah, so a lot of our stores here at Dustin Commons that have opened up have moved to a no-touch checkout procedure. So whether that's having a credit card swiper that the guest can just swipe the card themselves, that way you're not handing a card back and forth between the guest and the patron. I do know some people don't have that type of technology with their POS and different things of that nature. You may still have to physically sign. So it's just making sure you've got hand sanitizer as well as wipes and things of that nature, so you can immediately wipe down any surfaces that have been touched by a guest when checking out as soon as they've checked out. And it's great too, because the other people in the store can see that and feel safer as far as checkout procedures and things are concerned.
Okay, great. And there's always, we don't talk about protecting the equipment too, which, I talked to a few owners that, they were spraying down their point of sale devices after every client and didn't realize that some of that wet material would destroy the point of sale device on the inside. So they changed their procedures. So I think you have a good point of thinking it through and figuring out how you work with this and finding a good balance. So, we live in a social media focused world, and in this past few weeks, I think I've seen social media has become the mainstay of a lot of our daily routine during the shutdown. I mean, things such as, I think everybody knows what a Zoom or WebEx meeting now is. Microsoft reports they went from 44 million team members or team setups to 100 million team setups in 1 month. So a lot of this communication is driven by social media. How does a retail work with this more active social media focus?
It's right now, a lot of the messaging and everything that you're seeing, I'm operating under, kind of 3 different tiers here. We want to inform people, we want to engage them, and we also want to inspire them. And so, coming back and getting business and everything back online is very important. Of course, Mother's Day is coming up this weekend, so we're really trying to figure out, okay, how do we promote, coming out, supporting our local businesses, and shopping and getting out and about, dining and recouping that with mom. But at the same time, also being very understanding and conscientious of the fact that there are a lot of people out there that have lost their jobs and don't have income coming in. And this is a very difficult time for them. And so we're trying not to be too product centric and buy, but more about the experiences and the things that you may be able to offer mom in a limited capacity or an alternate capacity to what we're normally used to at that point. So our messaging, while we're promoting that we're open and encouraging people to come out, it's more geared around a lifestyle, enjoying the open air, and finally getting to be out and about with those that we care about while still doing these things in a safe way. We've increased our cleaning. We're posting pictures of that on social media. We're answering any and all safety questions. We're also making sure that all of our information is updated as well. People want to get information quickly. They want to get correct information. So if you're operating at a limited capacity or on a limited menu, or your merchandise supply is a little bit low, or whatever it may be, people are going to be understanding of those things. You just have to be very open and honest about it. Transparency is key when it comes to health and safety as well. And we've made sure that our housekeeping, janitorial, security, and even our staff, when we're out in the public, we've got masks and gloves and are ensuring that social distancing and all that is taking effect. And this is just the new norm and the new reality. And I think we've got to be very open and honest about what those look like. And I think people are going to be respectful of that as long as we're transparent.
I think that's some great insight and a very positive outlook. And I think about the term Okaloosa we've been hearing recently, and You know, Okaloosa is filled with people that are great. And I think that we're going to see that that there's a great understanding in our community, and we're going to live up to that new term Okaloosa. Maybe we can replace the new normal with here's how you live Okaloosa style and live our lifestyle like the lifestyle that Jennifer Adams is very familiar with. She's the director of Destin Fort Walton Beach Tourism. Jennifer lives and breathes with the Emerald Tide of tourism. Jennifer, we hear a lot about short-term rentals still being shut down. We also hear that hotels are allowed to be open. Can you help us understand why hotels are open and vacation rentals may not be?
Sure, thank you. So it comes down to regulation, nuts and bolts. Hotels and motels, they're regulated through DBPR, and short-term vacation rentals are not. So that's the discussion now. And for years, there's been a bill floating through session to try to update and regulate vacation rentals, and it's never passed. So, but right now, the discussion with my lodging industry is, really what can we do to give the governor some options on how to bring short-term rentals into the fold. Representative Ponder has been really spearheading this with us. In fact, last Wednesday, I think, Mel, you called me and said, hey, can we get on a call with CFO Petronas, and Senator Gaynor and talk about this and see what we can suggest. And really what happened during that call was CFO Petronas said, give us some suggestions, give us a plan, give us some guidelines and help us so we can talk to the governor and sort of get out of this gray area. And in fact, that's what we've done. About 15 minutes ago, TDC chair, with approval from the Board of County Commissioners, sent Governor DeSantis a letter with some guidelines of some procedures that we could possibly commit to move forward, especially in preparation for our summer season. There is a task force document that was published a few days ago from the state of Florida, the Reopen Task Force, and short-term vacation rentals are in phase 2, but there's some language in there that is a little bit difficult for Northwest Florida. One of it says we may encourage only visitation from within in-state Florida. And we all know that for us in Northwest Florida, we don't get a lot of visitors from within the state of Florida. And then there were some other discussions on how long between check-ins so we can have proper sanitizing. Right now, we are working on that. And if you want to join our partner call, we have a weekly partner call every Wednesday at 9:00. We've been doing so for the last 7 or 8 weeks. If you'd like to be on that call, you can email us at marketing@destinfwb.com, and we'll put you on there and you can join us in. We'll be having this discussion more about vacation rentals tomorrow at 9:00.
That's some exciting news, and it's great to hear all the work that's being done and thought about that we hadn't heard about before. For the past several weeks, my vacation spots have been different spots in my backyard. The town says they've never seen my yard this nice and neat, but most vacations are planned, and many times months ahead. The shutdown has changed many plans of vacationers and Emerald Coast vacation businesses. How do we in Okaloosa develop a marketing plan to bring those tourists back to our Emerald Coast?
Well, so in mid-March, we halted all of our advertising. We were in the middle of a $5 million push of a new rebrand. And so we stopped all advertising because there was no reason to put messaging out there when you couldn't come and stay. We have, in the interim, have a program called Adventure Anywhere. And you can go on to destinfwb.com and see Adventure Anywhere, where we've put together a number of daily, every other day, we select a topic and we put together some activities, some messaging, some recipes, some content that we have been pushing out to moms and visitors and people at home, anybody who just wants to join in. And the reason why we did that interim messaging is because we couldn't advertise, but we wanted to keep our area, Destin, Fort Walton Beach, top of mind, so when people were ready to book and come on back. So we did some cool things, like there's one whole there's one whole day that talks about how you can teach yourself how to surf even though you're not here. You know, you get a towel. We had a surf instructor. You know, then we make a cool snack, and then and so it goes on. And they have become part of even homeschool itineraries. I see Diane's on the call. The the Science Center has done a series of them. So we kept our messaging top of mind, throughout this time without spending, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on advertising. We are moving into our recovery phase, which I hate to call recovery because this is not a hurricane. People are going to completely change the way that they behave and interact when they come back. But this next phase plan is called Venture Out. And it's really designed at sending a message to moms, to families, that we're safe, we're clean, and we have space. Now, safe and clean we can do together. The fact that we want to promote space, we already know that we have a crowding problem. We are known to be crowded, packed, and so we have to work on that. And so we're working on ways to do that with technology, with different marketing strategies. And I will be unveiling that plan as soon as I know that we can say that we're wide open, and as soon as we have the direction from the commissioners. But I would encourage everybody to think about safety, space, and cleanliness, because that is really where we're going to be focused on. Everybody is ready to hit the send button on the "we're open for business" message. Of all the industry calls that I've been on, of all the the boards and the discussion, welcome back, we're open for business is not going to get us where we need to be. On the same note, we particularly rely on us being a drive market. And now with domestic air travel not going to rebound anytime quickly, everybody is going to be competing for those drive markets. So we have to say it better and clearer, and I don't want to say quicker, but in the most relative way that we can, so we're meeting the needs and the fears and the concerns of our travelers.
I like that approach you have of developing the confidence in the tourists to come back, so they feel safe here, they feel clean. One of the interesting parts about tourism is that it covers a wide range of interactive products and services, many of which are delivered in unique environments. Say maybe boats, parachutes, restaurants, all sorts of different things. How do we work together to meet the guidelines in those kind of unique environments?
Well, that's a good question, because I have a convention center that's shut down right now. We're trying to figure out how we can meet those requirements with thousands of people. So I do believe I'm assuming that this will be part of the discussion also with the advisory committee that was recently adopted this morning. We will continue to work with our partners to provide as much information as possible. Each week with our partner calls, we have a discussion, but then we follow up with related materials on our website that you can even go on now and see. So we'll be gathering that information, obviously looking at FRLA standards. I sit on the Northwest Florida chapter, the board of FRLA, and they're in tune with these standards. There's some new standards that came out through our emergency management team this morning from Patrick Maddox that John Hopkins has put forth that will bring forth to the advisory committee, and then we're just going to continue to communicate. The TDC's main job has been to bring tourism here. Now we've pivoted a little bit, and we understand the important role for us to be a resource as much as possible. So
that's good, and it looks like you have a good understanding of our area's clients, and tourism, and working towards successfully meeting their expectations to build a good, strong, successful relationship. Is there any understanding of how the demographics of tourists may change because of this shutdown and rebirth?
Well, so it's interesting because when we launched as you all can tell, we're not using Emerald Coast anymore. Our brand is pretty clear. It's Destin Fort Walton Beach. And in the short 45 days that we actually launched the brand, we got some great pickup and resonance in markets that haven't been in our top 10. We've invested significantly in technology. The TDC Council was very adamant in that, and the Board of County Commissioners were very forward thinking in some of the research and the technology that we invested in so we can glean our data. Our brand was launched really around the older millennial who has children, and the promise for the brand is to make childhood an adventure again. Even in it, and this was done even before this pandemic, but with technology, with organized sports, with everything kids don't have time to be kids again. So we were offering our nature-based destination and our activities to make childhood adventure again. That millennial is key and will still be key moving forward. The millennial knows that there's a statistic that says more than 50% of our nation's children spend less time outdoors than prison inmates. And that was before all this happened, but that was where we were targeting that millennial mom. She's going to want to still have a vacation. She influences up to the boomers and the Gen Xers, and she knows how to use technology. She also wants to get out. She also knows that moving forward, she can take a week off in November and get her kids out of school because the education system and the strict attendance policies will be lifted. So we're looking at all that. Also, those millennials that were apt to go and stay in an Airbnb, local research shows that they're not going to want to go into Airbnb because there's no regulations in the Airbnb and they want to be clean, hence going to a hotel or a resort. We're looking at our markets very carefully. Some are recovering better. Obviously, Atlanta, I don't want to talk about Atlanta right now, but other markets like Dallas, they're recovering better. So we will not go in to reach those consumers in markets that are unhealthy. We will be going into markets that we can, get our messaging into, and that we can track their behaviors and their movement back into Destin Fort Walton Beach.
That's some exciting information. And I'd like to say at this point, thank you, Nathan Boyles, Nate Van Adder, Heather Rees, Jennifer Adams. Thank you for this expert information. It's a lot that we can use to think about and integrate into some successful business solutions. I'm excited to get up from my desk here and start working on it after this panel. And I'd like the communication to continue. Let's see what questions we have on the chat line. Hey, Seth, can you pull up one of those questions and let's start with one?
Sure. Give me 1 second here. Let me see if I can actually have our participants ask their own questions. I'm going to see if Patrick from the Gulfarian can share his question that he had in relationship to museums and similar type businesses.
Sure. Thank you, Seth. We obviously we feel we've kind of fit right in with that museum here at the Gulfarium, and we understand that it's 25% for museums and libraries, and through some further dialogue on this webinar here today, we're also finding, obviously, we know that the Fort Walton Beach City Library and museums that are run by the city are probably closed at this time, but private entities have a little more sway and can make their own decision, and that's where we're going to be going here at the Gulfarium.
Anyone from our panel have any input on knowing anything about those types of businesses and whether or not they're going to be fall into that same rule?
I will add, Seth, sorry, obviously we're a little bit different what we are and what we have versus, some of the other businesses out there. So many are unique to themselves, no doubt about it. And Gulfarium, having been here since 1955, and we certainly appreciate and love our community and appreciate the love that we get back from our community. And we're looking forward to getting things moving. And again, I've appreciated this chat here put on by the Chamber.
Very good. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate you bringing that to us. Lindsay Gowing had a question. I'll unmute her to see if she wants to pose her question to the group. Doesn't look like she has her mic on, but her question was whether there's any discussion on whether or not smaller gyms are going to have any opportunity to reopen in the near future, seeing that certain organizations like bowling alleys have been allowed to open, and they would seem like they're at a higher risk than things like gyms and small organized classes, things like that.
Seth, I've got something on that. Something that I have a friend who's a very aggressive entrepreneur, young aggressive entrepreneur. He owns a gym. He's been shut down, and his business was just decimated by this organization. He does group fitness, and I participated in his gym for a long time. He does a fantastic job. And when he found out he wasn't going to reopen, he was just completely kind of stricken. A lot of his patrons had stood by him and kept paying their memberships while it was closed, and he was doing some online stuff. But he took this as kind of an opportunity, and he rented a big tent, put it outside in the parking lot of a different building, never opened his doors, and he had stations out there that were just about 10, 15 feet apart, and people were working out outside in this park. And I think it was just him doing what he could do, and he wasn't even charging them because they had already paid their membership fees and anything, and he gave them the month free. And he's like, no, am I making much money doing this? No, but am I keeping a loyal customer base? Yes. And he's following all the guidelines. He didn't open his gym. He's not making money on it. The business not open, but people were out there. They're being safe. They're being cautious, and they're working out. And in this environment, the regulators and the oversight that we have from the city and everything that I'm hearing even from the state is, hey, be smart, be safe. But if you can, be really ingenious about an idea like that, make it happen. And if it's not right, somebody will come and tell you. But really, if you own a gym or you know somebody that owns a gym, suggest that to them, because these guys, that suggestion I thought was awesome, and I just want to share that with the group.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. I
Yes,
appreciate that. We've got a question from Tilly, and I'm not even going to attempt her last name because I'll just embarrass myself. I'll unmute her and see if she wants to ask this question herself.
Hi guys. The last name is pronounced Surya-Singh. I know, it's crazy. My first name is Tilly, and I own 2 shops, one in Fort Walton and one in Mariester. If you haven't heard of it, it is called The Beauty Experts. I guess my original question was just how could we be a part of the, the roundtable discussion regarding opening up small salons. Businesses like mine, we don't quite depend on tourism. A lot of our clients are local residents. So once we do open up, our clients will be, our local residents. And I just want to be able to open up with the restricted measurements, I guess.
Can y'all hear me, Stephen? This is Nathan Boyles.
Yes.
So, her question was, how can she participate in that conversation? And, honestly, I wish I had a good answer specifically for that. That's frankly a statewide conversation. I know that Representative Mel Ponder was on this call. I'm not sure if he's still with us or not, but I noted earlier in the the correspondence, the chat correspondence there, he was referencing the fact that there has been some chatter that the governor may be taking action, or at least is pondering taking some action on your particular kind of subset of businesses. And I think that would also potentially apply to the smaller gyms. And so there may be sooner rather than later. I know we're in this first phase, but I think what we're seeing the potential that, the first phase may have within and of itself several phases. And so I'm optimistic we could see some action earlier on the ability for some of those businesses to get back up and going. And I don't know if Seth or Stephen, if Mel is still here, if he might be able to chime in on that.
Let's Representative Ponder, are you interested in adding to that conversation at all?
Sure. I mean, happy to. Commissioner Bowles nailed it, but of course, it's an honor to share. But to answer her question, I think the roundtable they had over the weekend, many of you probably saw that. I thought it was the governor's a great step he took to meet with individual owners of salons, barbershops, et cetera. The concern that he had, and I think that they gave was practical insight of what are you going to do to sanitize, be safe, be clean, that Jennifer talked about. Give him confidence to open you up. And I think that all paid dividends. My understanding from some discussions this morning before the county commission meeting is that be on the lookout for maybe something coming out by the end of the week. I think you'd even put a chat about doing a roundtable up here. I don't think, from what I understand, that will be necessary at this point in time. I think he's going to move sooner than that could even get put together. So for the salons, the barbershops, things of that nature, I think we'll hear news sooner than later on that.
And I'm taking a note down here to go gather some of that research and material and see if we can't help share it out with everybody in the community. Maybe that'll help get the communication flowing. I've got myself a task here. Thank you.
Sure,
Yeah,
of course.
thank you for sharing that, sir. We had a question from somebody asking about sharing a daily chart with the county's numbers. And I think we'll answer that probably offline, but it's, we have several dashboards that are available through our website, the county's website, that have links that go directly to that COVID dashboard for Florida that also breaks it down into the Okaloosa County numbers. So we'll send that link out and make sure it's prevalent on the chamber page again as well. We had another question, and I'm not going to read the whole question because it was rather extensive, but it was basically posing the question of what is our plan for dealing with what we expect may be close to a 20% unemployment level in our county as a result of this. I'm wondering if any of you gentlemen might want to chime in on how we think we're going to combat that as we move forward.
Well, I'll take the first stab, I guess. Nathan Boyles here. My plan would be to get everybody back to work, and to do so as quickly as possible. I think that we're blessed here in Northwest Florida through a lot of opportunity, and I think that if we can move quickly enough and safely enough into a reopen phase, that we can get a lot of these businesses back up on their feet, and we can salvage our summer tourism season, and we will see those unemployment numbers fall just as quickly as we saw them rising. Now, that being said, there are plans being made for reemployment fairs and business fairs, and trying to make sure that we're matching local resources to the extent we have control over those to what the needs are likely to be of the business community as we move forward. And frankly, participation in calls like today, listening to the business community, understanding what those needs are, because that then feeds back into what those needs of those unemployed folks are going to be, is an important part of that, and then trying just to adapt and react as quickly as possible at a local level.
Perfect, thank you. Just a follow on with the question about the dashboard. Our chair, Vince Mayfield, did post a link to that dashboard in the chat. So for any of you that are looking for those numbers, you can use that. The last thing I have is I had a question myself that I would like to pose to either Nathan Van Adder or Heather. I think both of you might be able to speak to this, but I'm curious to find out if our retail and our restaurant businesses are having challenges presently with supply chain issues and also getting employees to come back to work. I know that's been commonly asked concerns, and I just wonder if you guys have any insight to provide on that.
I can kind of speak real quick to some of the conversations that I've had with our stores here at Destin Commons. We do have several restaurants that haven't been able to open any more than pickup and delivery due to some staffing issues and just getting people to come back to work. I think there's a cross in, still not necessarily maybe feeling safe to come back and work in a food service or in a position where social distancing is a little bit more difficult. So I think that's definitely one issue that we've seen, but it's kind of split 50-50. We've had, employees of stores and store managers chomping at the bit to get open and people excited about getting back to work, but then you're going to see obviously the opposite side of that as well. And then just as far as supply chain, a lot of our national tenants haven't opened yet, and I think that's more due to issues with them ensuring that their corporate guidelines and things of that nature are training all their employees company-wide. So when you're talking about an organization that has thousands of stores, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees, bringing them back online after being furloughed, or whatever that may be, may also be a little bit difficult in that nature. As far as that's concerned. As far as food and product for our restaurants, I haven't heard any issues with those types of things as of yet. Of course, there's chatter about, a potential meat shortage across the nation that could be happening, and different things of that nature. So that's kind of what I've heard from my end of things. Nate, I don't know if you've heard anything food-wise, or any difficulties you guys are having restaurant-wise.
Yeah, we've had our supplier. We switched suppliers a little while ago, and our current supplier, they've had problem getting us pork. We were doing some pork butts for some family meals to go. They couldn't get us any of those. Pork has been the biggest problem. They ran out of gloves for a while. We now have plastic gloves. We're actually able to get masks, the disposable masks, not the N95. But the little disposable mask, we're able to buy those in packs. And for people that are having trouble finding that stuff, go to your food suppliers out there, or really, I could even buy it for somebody that needs a pack of 50 masks. I think they cost like $2 each. But we have the ability to get some of that through our food suppliers. And the one thing I'll say on the supply chain is we have seen prices rise in the proteins, especially the beef. And that's one of the things that's hard for a restaurant, because when the price rises, we can't just go out and reprint our menus. You're stuck with the menu price in a lot of cases. So, watching those prices, if they rise too much, everybody will have to adjust as that happens. And speaking to employees, it is a challenge with the amount of unemployment that some of the employees are now receiving, for us to get them to come back to work. A lot of them are making much more money than they were making before, and they're worried that the tips won't be as good, or they just feel like they don't want to be back because they don't feel safe, and that's very understandable in a lot of situations. So staffing is going to be an issue. Bringing people back is going to be an issue. In the meantime, we're running on about half of what we were before, even though 2 of the 3 locations are open. So, and hand sanitizer, we were stuck. Last thing on hand sanitizer, we were out of hand sanitizer. Luckily, we've been able to we're now making our own hand sanitizer, and we have a limited amount. We're selling it only 2 per person if somebody wants it at the brewery there. But that's all the supply chain and employee issues that we have.
Thanks, Nathan. Stephen, any final comments?
Yes, I think this has been a great start to getting some great communication out. And I thank you all for taking the time to participate in this event. And we'll be reviewing all the remaining questions and respond to you. There's some we may need to do a little bit more research on, but we will. I've taken some notes here. I'd like to let you know that the rumor mill says that phase 2 may be happening in 14 days. Now that's the rumor. That's not really, concrete or factual yet. And that would put it on or about May 18th. We are anticipating that the phase 2 order would be released somewhere prior to that date. And we're hoping to get that order, digest that order, and bring you a phase 2 panel discussion somewhere around that time. So if things sticks to schedule, we'd probably like to see you again around the 18th and share some more communication. So I thank everybody, and I think this kind of concludes the panel, unless any panelists have any final words to say.
Ask an oral question?
Sorry?
May I ask an oral question?
Seth?
Sure. Is it
Yeah, this is Dave Parasat. I guess this question is primarily for Commissioner Boyles. Governor DeSantis is always talking about testing as the key issue on opening up for the businesses and opening up the state. What is the status of COVID-19 testing in Okaloosa County? On Channel 3, you always, on the TV, they always talk about testing sites for Escambia and Santa Rosa County, but there's nothing about Okaloosa County.
Thanks, Dave. It's always good to see you. I am hoping and praying that you have your pants on. Just gonna keep moving. No, seriously, good to see you, Dave. And an excellent question about testing. Obviously, we do not have any state-sponsored testing facilities here in Okaloosa County at this point in time. Of course, we are a infinitely small proportion of the overall positive tests in the state of Florida at this point in time. I think that's something to be proud of, and we've certainly been blessed by. Also means, obviously, then the state's not going to be focusing a lot of those resources in our community. That being said, the commission did give direction today to move forward with a staff EMS plan to utilize some of our resources to actually establish some mobile testing units. Basically, I think they'll be using our ambulance type vehicles and a couple of our EMS staffs working. I think they're going to start 2 days a week, and we'll deploy these. The idea is to actually put them at various locations throughout the community. Those will, of course, be published in advance. And so, folks, whether you're in Destin or Baker, you'll have an opportunity to go to a reasonably close sampling collection site, have medical personnel that will assist in taking that sample, and then that sample will actually be sent off and likely be tested at a state lab. Now, one of the limitations will still be turnaround time. Right now, they're still estimating 7 to 10 days in the actual turnaround time and that sample testing results coming back. But yes, efforts are underway to ensure that, as we move into phase 1 and look towards phase 2, that we do have adequate testing capacity, because that is an important part of this process, allowing in particular our workers who are going back to work to be able to get access to testing if needed.
Thank you.
Okay, I think, Seth, that probably wraps us up here. Thank you, panelists, for helping out with this. And I know you did a lot of work to pull this together in a few short days. And I am encouraged that we're making some great strides forward, and Okaloosa is going to be great. So until next time, I think everybody have a great day and enjoy Okaloosa.